All right, boys and girls, in order to create our sunset landscape or sunrise of a cityscape, what we have to do is we have to figure out how we're going to divide our space up so that we have first of all, we're going to have the horizon line, which is the imaginary line that separates the sky from the earth. That's at the bottom of the page. So with your white piece of watercolor paper, I want you to kind of pretend you could figure out halfway through the page just by putting your finger somewhere in the middle, okay? And if you want, you could put a little point there, okay? Just a little mark. Then I want you to try to put a little mark where you think halfway would be between those 2 points. And then halfway here. So basically you're going to divide it into quarters, okay? So that they're kind of like 4 equal parts. Halfway, then try to figure out the halfway point here, and then the halfway point here. So halfway, put a point. Now halfway between here, put a point. Now, the horizon line is going to be this bottom quarter line, okay? Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not very good at drawing straight lines. So if you have a ruler, you can use a ruler to draw that straight line at the bottom. Or if you have a piece of paper, maybe you have one of those rulers that I gave you, you can use a piece of paper. Or you can even use another piece of paper and just use the bottom of the paper to make your straight line, okay? So this is where we're going to have the horizon line. Right now, we're going to paint the sunrise or the sunset, whatever it is that you are imagining for your background. So we're going to paint the first color you're going to do, and you're going to start with wetting your brush and going right to the yellow, okay? So we want to paint along the line that we created, and you want to basically go back and forth, covering the area using the yellow, and we're going to be blending into orange and the magenta. And then after the magenta, and we want to do this all in one class. So I'm doing it vertically because it's easier to paint vertically. And it's also best to have a paper towel or a wipe on hand in case you mess up, okay, for the blotting. Okay, so in order to blend the next color, you make sure you wash in between each color. You want to make sure the paper is wet. Once the paper is wet, then you can start making that blending feel onto your watercolor paper. You want to make sure that you have a nice amount of saturated colors, and you're basically painting up and down here. Now I want to start blending. I'm just going back and forth in the same motion. So now I'm going to blend some magenta in here. And with this paint that we have, the magenta and red orange actually make like a red. So we're kind of getting this blending feel. And you're going to do the magenta up until you get to the top of, almost like the top quarter of the page. And then we're going to add we're trying to make it like a nighttime feel. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the blue violet, because blue violet and magenta actually blend really nicely. So remember, you always want to keep your hands on the paper. Even though we're painting it vertically, we're actually making a horizontal blending with our watercolor. And you want to make sure you hold the paint the way that I'm holding the paint. And you want to make sure there's no white spots. And you want to make sure that in order to blend, that your paper is nice and wet, and then you can re-add the colors, and you want to always go in a left to right motion, okay? When you're done going to kind of towards that nighttime sky, and if you want to make it darker, you could add a little bit of paint on top. The yellow will be almost dry. So now what we're going to do is you're going to add the blue water. Make sure that you wash your brush thoroughly. Get into the blue paint. And in order to get that nice even line, I'm leaning my hands on the page. And I'm almost kind of like holding my breath a little bit. So I'm leaning my hands. I'm using my hand that you can't see. I'm holding it still. Now you may want to use a finger to hold, the yellow is probably almost dry by now. And we want to do this in one class period. Once you outline that section from the yellow to the blue, which will be the water, okay? Then you can go right back and forth to get that nice blue water. And don't worry if it's not totally even, because first of all, we're going to be drawing on top of this. This is just our background. This is our environment. So this bottom part is all going to be this kind of like sky blue. And you can see I'm constantly going back and forth, and I'm painting in the same direction. So here you have your background, and you want to make sure that you keep it nice and still. Wash your brush thoroughly if you had, and then you're going to put your brush in like this. Make sure you clean out your colors by dabbing them if you have any mixture of color. As long as your yellow's clean and you don't have any colors in other sections, that will be totally fine. But this is what we're looking to do for this first class.